Could be anybody, I don't know, man. Raven. The Raven Magic. Deodra. Got my setup. Wait for a couple of people to filter in here. I'm going to try to talk to you today about plant ecology and ID and a couple of Hawthorn species. And we'll see if I can say something good. So let me know if you have any questions. I did a couple of illustrations to kind of like help visualize like what we're talking about. And then I also have a PowerPoint, so if I'm looking off over here, it's just because I'm reading my cheat sheet. Yay! Well, I put on this filter for a reverse mirror filter, so you can read everything. But yeah. God, baby. Went to the MER class earlier, and that was really great. I sort of like worked through some finding my precious gift to myself, which was really special. And we kind of traveled from the sea into the forest, and I was like coming out of the mud and became the tree and broke out into the nymph, the forest nymph. So that was really nice. And then earlier today we had tree keys, and Raven had a lot of great information on that. Stuff that she's discovered through her own investigations and walks through the woods and discussions with trees. So I love that because I've got like some branches and tree keys and like a lot of sticks and stuff on my walls. I love stuff like that. Things that, are sort of gifts from nature and can be given back to nature. So that makes it special. Amira. Hi, hi. All right, I don't know if y'all can read this or I should bring it closer, but I will also read it to you. But first off, I'm DeerHart. Also can be Kiki. Also can be Kirsten. That's my Christian name. But yeah, I'd like to make it simple and just call me DeerHart because that's what all the Southern ladies call me, and it's where I feel most at home. So, it's like my facial name. I got it from sort of like a situation where I was pouring out like these emotions about a boy or something to my landscape supervisor, and he said something about, my DeerHart, and he spelled it H-A-R-T, which is the Welsh or Celtic, can't quite remember. It's another name for a red stag deer. So it only made sense to me to do the DeerHart, and it's what all like the Southern ladies call me. They're like, "Oh, thank you, DeerHart." So it feels natural. I grew up in the Midwest. Had a lot of trees around, and because my mom wanted to live in the woods, but Dad said, I'll just plant a bunch of trees instead. So we have quite like the arboretum at my parents' house. So that's where I started to learn about trees and be interested in plants and stuff. And when I graduated high school, I wanted to sort of combine my love of design and art. So I went to school for landscape architecture at Ball State University up in Muncie. And we went through it all. We got the Bachelor of Landscape Architecture. It's a 5-year program, and my last year was specializing in phytoremediation, which is using plants to extract like heavy metals and like break down toxins in the soil. Chirp, chirp. That's a Ball State thing. Got Heidi Seek. Got A Kid Sees Trees. So yeah, I specialized in like plant design and using plants to extract toxins from the soil. Then after I graduated, I felt really, well, first off, I made my first spirit staff, and that gave me the courage to journey to where I needed to be. Because I was sort of like not really sure where I was supposed to go next, but the mountains of Appalachia seemed very appropriate for me. So I traveled down here like around my birthday that year, and it just really like fit, you know. It's like a tropical rainforest here, and everything grows. But there were lots of new plants to learn. I moved, and then I got a job at the North Carolina Arboretum, where I did horticulture and did a design for a children's nature escape. And after that, I've just been like gardening around the house, and I've got as many house plants as I can take care of. A lot of orchids and other stuff. Yeah, so learning, I did a certified plant professional course, so I learned even more plants, because through school we learned like 500 plants or so, and then I learned more like ornamental, like landscape plants when I came to North Carolina, and now have been mainly focused on like natives and pollinator gardens. And I love like the parkway. I love going hiking. One of my goals is like I would love to like lead like a nature hike like on the parkway, maybe in full spiritual gear, but that's just like a silly big dream. But learning about like plant ID and like, you know, has helped me really decode like open my eyes to like this whole world of like plant communities and ecology and how everything fits together. You know, like you can kind of see like what's invasive and what's like native, and why those things like get invasive, and why those things you know, why you know the world outside looks the way it does. So I'm really blessed, honestly. It's beautiful down here. So yeah, sorry. So we've been doing this Facehole Collective, the Facehole Stream. Raven found me through my spirit staves and like hashtag nature magic, and gave me sort of vocabulary for some of the things I was already doing with my spirit staves and my spiritual gear, like some of my like weapons for the spiritual revolution, and my my wings and my horns, and like, you know, because I was just doing those things just for me, but it kind of like, I don't know, it's nice to like be able to share that with someone and discuss it. So it's like, it is happening. Yeah, I'm into it. But I'll talk about spirit stabs on Friday at 11 if you all are not working, or you can watch it later. Yes, yes. Hashtag blessed. Okay. Where should I even start? I wanted to kind of start with like vocabulary, because if you can have a good like plant vocabulary, you can decipher, and you have, well, you need a guide. If you understand the vocabulary and you have a guide, you can basically find out what any plant is that's like a deciduous outside plant. Just from like process of elimination, basically. So like I have this book, some recommended reading. This is Key to Common Woody Landscape Plants in the Midwest, but you can get one for your area for sure. But it basically has in here, you know, what I'm going to break down for you, different leaf attributes and branching and tree habits that help you determine, like, for sure what a plant is. Can you read this thing? I'm going to bring it closer. So we've got like a leaf diagram here. Certain aspects that are important. We have the leaf margin, which is the border around the outside. There can be several different types of leaf margins, which I'll go over soon. The apex is the top of the leaf. There's the lobe, which is like the part that juts out, and then the sinus is like the like reverse lobe. So you've got the lobe and the sinus, and then the veins are coming off of the midrib, which is the center of the leaf. These are glands. Not all plants have these, but the glands are like these two little balls. Like, yeah, they're like these two little sexy balls on the midrib, like right at the start of the petiole. So the petiole is important. It's not the stem. It's the part from the leaf that attaches to the stem, the woody stem of the plant. Yeah, cherries have glands. Other ones. Stipule is important because hawthorns actually have stipules. It's kind of like this mini leaf that's just coming out right next to the leaf scar. So I didn't write that on here, but like right where the petiole meets the stem, if you remove that, that's the leaf scar, and that can be a great indicator if you're not quite sure, you know, what you're looking at. A lot of them are compared to faces, like a lemon face or like a smiling face. Yeah. So that's like a general leaf overview. The leaf margin is the outside of the leaf. Entire is when it's just smooth on the outside. You've got serrate, which is like an upward facing tooth. Yeah, winter ID is important too, because like, especially if you live like in like Canada, I'm sure, like a good part of the year is like lots of, you know, what is this tree if it doesn't have leaves? Because like it can, then you really have to go off the bark and off the leaf scars and the buds and just the information you have available, but it's definitely possible. Serrulate margin is like a finer tooth margin. Doubly serrate it's like a serrate on serration. So if serrulate is like a finer one, doubly serrate is like you're combining those two together. Dentate is more of just like a regular tooth margin. And then crenate is like a bubbly, like rounded tooth margin. And then we've got all trees are separated into alternate arrangement or opposite arrangement. And there's like a couple other ones like world, where it like goes around the whole stem, but that's like more rare. And like most plants are alternate or oppositely arranged. So alternate is where it's like boom, 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 boom. And then opposite is where they grow out both sides at once. And then there's also two types of leaves. So we've got the simple leaves, which come in either pinnate or palmate. Pinnate is similar to the opposite, so it's just the same on both sides. And then palmate is where it's all radiating out from the center, like a palm. And then there's also compound leaves, which is when the petiole extends and connects them together. So this would be like an alternate compound leaf, which I can't even think of a plant that's like actually like that. I was just drawing it as an example. But there's also doubly compound leaves, which I'll refer to next. So all these are like good terms to like be familiar with, because it can help you like if you get a plant guide or if you're like not sure what you're looking at. All of these plant books like are going to go off of these vocabulary terms. Yeah. All right, I'm going to go through leaf shapes next, and we're actually going to draw them together. If that's okay. Got some leaf shapes here, and we're going to fill them in. So first we have ovate and obovate. Both of those are like egg-shaped leaves. So an ovate leaf would be stem, and then the fat end of the egg is at the bottom. That's your ovate. Then we have obovate, which is like the opposite, where the egg fat end is on the top. Heidi Seek, yes. You call me Omoides. Stephanie, or Heidi Seek, used to help me study plants. So we thought of a lot of funny mental cues to remember all the Latin names, which I'll go over in a second. We've got a lanceolate leaf, which means it's tapered at the bottom and then at the top. So it's pointed at both ends. Swoop. Swoop. So that might be like a willow or a water oak. We've got spatulate. Is that right? Spatulate? So it's like a spatula. It's like a big fat spoon on the end. It's long. It's like a big teardrop. Then we have orbicular, which is like a perfectly round kind of disc-shaped leaf. If you know like a smoke bush, those have those like orbicular leaves. Cordate. Cor is like liqueur. It's a Latin root for heart, so it's a heart-shaped leaf. There's also obcordate, which means it's like a heart at the top. But this is like a red bud, maybe like a linden. We've got a truncate, which truncate just means that it's like flat on one end. So this one's like truncate at the bottom, like a tulip poplar. So truncate, you can also have truncate at the top, but I can't think of any leaves that are like that. A beech is more like ovate, and then it's got like a dentated margin, I would say. We've got rhomboid, which is a diamond shape. Then we have a deltoid that's like a cottonwood. I love the cottonwood tree. Raven pulled out her like cottonwood tree key earlier, and I was just like, oh yeah. A lot of cool things. We've got perfoliate, which means the leaf is perforated by the stem, so it looks like the leaf is like inside the stem. Oh well. Yeah, perfoliate. And then we have a lobed. Whoop. That one got a little crazy. Yeah, so a lobed would be like a maple or an oak. There's lots of different lobed leaves. Then we have a linear leaf, which is like a little bit different than a lanceolate, where it has parallel margins on the side. And then we have here, this is a doubly compound or bipinnate. So it's like a doubled up compound leaf. So it's got compound on compound. So it's got like all these little guys that come off of that stem, and then it comes off of a larger stem that then connects to the woody stem. There's also some trees in the same species that like have vastly different leaves, and hawthorn is one of them. Like when I think of hawthorn, I think of sort of like the lobed little leaf, like a Washington hawthorn, but there's also like a very wide variety of leaf shapes. There's actually over like 1,000 hawthorns maybe. Like they listed in the book I read that it's like 35 to 100, but can be like, it's almost like apples. Like they're all like so similar, but like slightly different. And it kind of comes down to like the chromosomes but they're all kind of the same in that they all have thorns and they all have the same kind of flower, but some of them don't have thorns. Some of them like have sort of been cultivated to have less thorns, or you know, but they all kind of have the same-ish flowers. It's in the rose family. I don't want to get ahead of myself. It's like a rose family, and so it's also a palm fruit. It has like, it's like a mini apple, but like smaller than a crab apple. But some of them are like a little bit more crab apple sized. Yeah, rose family. It's like rosaceae. I don't know if I'm going to draw all these little leaves on here, but I also can. Let me know, drop any questions in the chat. Is Acadia bipinnate? I'm not quite sure if I know that tree. I mean, I think I know it, but a bipinnate is like, when I think of bipinnate, I think of we call it like the golden rain tree. It smells like peanut butter when you like break it off. It's like really invasive. It's like all over the place. Yeah. So close. All right, we did it. The peanut butter tree. Okay, so most plants are like go by a Latin name if you're any kind of like a plant professional. There's a common name and a Latin name. The Latin name has two parts. There's the genus name, which is like the family name, and then there's the specific epithet. And then from there, you have either the varietal or the cultivar. So a varietal would be like Gladitsia tricanthus variety inermis is a golden, a honey locust that is the unarmed variety. So it's a thornless honey locust. And then a cultivar is more of a, like a, I want to say like a scientifically bred like plant, like a, yeah. So if you work at a botanical garden or an arboretum or a university, there may be a cultivar. You might get a tree to try to have like a certain, like to be thornless or to have more beautiful flowers or, you know, whatever. You might try to like get it to be more healthy, but normally the cultivars are less healthy. But sometimes they're not. But the common name is like easier to refer to because it's not like all these magic spells words. But there can be a lot of like confusion in the common names because some things are called the same things, but depending on the area that you're from. When you're like, it's better to go by the Latin name if you want to be specific. Yes. The fruit of the hawthorn is the fleshy fruit. The palm droops. So Crataegus, which is the Latin name, goes by many common names. It goes by hawthorn, quickthorn, thornapple, maytree, whitethorn, mayflower, hawberry. It also goes by mayhaw in the south, and the mayhaw has actually just like all these different trees that go by that. So it's hard to like nail down sometimes. But it's a genus of several hundred species in the rose family, native to temperate regions of the northern hemisphere, Europe and Asia, North Africa, and North America. Crataegus is derived from the Greek kratos, strength, because of the great strength of the wood, and the sharp referring to the thorns of the species. The name haw is originally an Old English word for hedge, and they're used prolifically in the English countryside for borders and along roadsides. But it's also a name, a haw is also the name of like the fruit with the little nut in it. Pinus is pine, spruces aren't pine. Yeah, I'm actually like not even getting into evergreens because it's just like, I don't know. Sometimes it's just like, it all comes down to like some little white lines on the underside of the needles. But yeah, pines and spruces are like very different. Pines come in bunches and then spruces come in like more like flat needles, I think. Or yeah, this is why I can't go into evergreens because I'm not totally sure. The mayhaw are grown for their reddish to purple fruit and used in jellies for a tangy taste. So there's nearly 1,000 species that have been proposed as legitimate and appear in a variety of environments, from river bottoms to wet depressions and sandy oak pine woods, and even thin soils and like rocky outcroppings. So some of the hawthorns are like super, what's the word I'm looking for? They're just like super like good for like urban environments. They're just really like hardy, in like especially like zones like 7 and up. So it's like anywhere like kind of south of here, like they don't do so well. They get like a fungal blight, but anywhere north of here they do a little bit better. Yeah. All the hawthorn knowledge. So generally, they're shrubs or small trees, and with 2 or more trunks and a spreading rounded crown. They normally like come out and like over and sort of like jut out and form like a thicket, which is why they were used for like hedgerows in England, because it keeps livestock in and it keeps crazy people out, I'm assuming. So hawthorns are all alternately, where are we at? I think they're almost all alternate. Simple margins with teeth. Some species have lobes, others don't. The leaf shape varies widely from oval to spatula to deltoid, rounded, and sharply pointed apex. It flowers around now, depending on where you're at, like late April to early June, and they're clusters. Each flower has 5 white petals, stamens of 10 or more, and the flowers resemble small apple blossoms. Just taking a bevy break. Are we all doing okay? You have been mauled by quite a few hawthorns. Yeah, you got to be careful. You know, there's one in my neighborhood, and I wasn't even sure it was one, but it definitely is. There's a couple of other thorny shrubs and trees that I'm gonna try to get to later. 35 minutes in. Doing pretty good. Yeah, I did want to say something about the smell, because I got like conflicting information where it said sometimes the hawthorn smells pungent and sometimes it smells sweet. So it's because certain species are good smelling and certain species are foul smelling. And I believe that's because the sweet smelling ones are pollinated by bees, and the more pungent smelling ones are pollinated by flies and beetles. So it's just like a difference in like the species again. And I think that's kind of something hawthorn does to kind of defend itself. It sort of like is always like tweaking like its DNA to be a little bit more like this or that. So, you know, maybe it's because I also had conflicting information about like ecology and the birds, because they're like, it's a cornerstone of ecology, like birds love the fruit. But actually, the reason why it's important is that birds don't prefer the fruit, so they'll eat other things first in the fall, and the fruits persist through the winter. So it's an important like late season food for birds. So they're just like, oh man, like it's February and we're out of all the yummy fruit, but like we have this hawthorn left. So and that's another reason why it's so widespread, because it the birds eat the fruit and digest the seeds and spread them out everywhere. So that's how thickets get born. So there's two of like the English hawthorns that I want to go over. The Crataegus monogyna, the common hawthorn, and then the Crataegus lavagita, the English hawthorn. So a lot of the ones that are in Europe are one of these or a combination of these. In the English hedgerows that I was talking about, they're almost all one of these species. The Crataegus monogyna is a Eurasian species of tree introduced to North America and Australia in the 1800s. It has become invasive in these countries because its seeds are dispersed by birds. It has been planted for centuries for hedgerows and borders along woodlands to keep livestock. The species is a cornerstone of ecology, providing habitat and food for many species of moth and butterfly, caterpillars, and birds. So butterfly and moth species all like sort of reproduce on the leaves, which is why also invasive and natives are important, but I'll go into that in a little bit. It grows rapidly for the first 15 years and can live for up to 250 years. I know Selkie said like something even like crazier, like 700 years. And I actually did read one where it's like they had chopped down a hawthorn tree, but then they like brought it back from a cutting. So it's like at that point, like, do you count it as the same tree? But that's what's great about like trees that can reproduce by cuttings and like grafting and stuff, because they can just go on and like be ever evolving and changing and surviving. The mother plant. Yes. So the English hawthorn has alternate leaves, ovate to obovate, with 3 to 5 broad cellulate lobes, dark green with stipules, and can be susceptible to leaf blight. Some of the other hawthorn species, there's the cockspur hawthorn, which is more of like a rounded leaf, has a rounded apex, also serrate margins. Slender stems have numerous 1 to 3 inch thorns. Tree habitat is rounded and broad. Low branching, dense, horizontal branches, perfect for those hedgerows, because the branches just kind of like jut out and they're just like, you shall not pass. Fruit is dark red palm drupes, about 1/8 of an inch to 1/2 an inch. So like just little baby fruits. It says, this is what I said earlier, few birds like the fruit, but they are important in late winter for food. And this cockspur hawthorn, the Crataegus crescali, is spread from Quebec to North Carolina and is tolerant to many urban and drought conditions. So that's related to like the thicket hawthorn. Any in Southern Cali? I feel like it would be like too warm for them there. I'm not totally sure what zone Southern California is in, but I'm pretty sure it's like too warm. When they're in warmer climates, they get fungus and leaf blight, and then they lose their leaves like early, which, you know, sucks for them. But so they tend to do better in like the British Isles and even down to like North Africa for the Eurasian species. And then over here, they're like Canada all the way from Kansas to North Carolina. So I think like they might be like a little bit more in the Pacific Northwest. Some of the European species of hawthorn is actually like considered invasive here. But there's also a lot of native hawthorns. But you know. I want to talk about a couple look-alike plants. One is the buckthorn, which is a very similar, it has a ovate leaf. It has, the thorns on the buckthorn are more lateral, so they like form at right angles, where like the horns on a hawthorn are a little more like upward pointing, I guess. Buckthorns have blackberries in the fall. And in the spring, the flowers are more like wispy and thin. Like they're similar, they're like little white flowers, but like the hawthorn flower is like a little buttercup, and like the blackthorn, it looks very similar, but it looks more like wispy. I don't know how else to describe it. In winter, if you look at the bud, which is like where the leaf would come out in the spring, the bud is like very close to the stem. It's kind of like nestled like right into like the stem. And the leaf scar looks like a face sucking a lemon. I'm just going to have to take their word for it. Because I looked at it and I was like, I guess so. But the hawthorn leaf scar looks more like a smiling face, and the buckthorn, I guess, is just more like a rounded kind of face on it. I want to talk about a little bit, sorry, I'm like standing so weird. Thank you all for coming. You have them everywhere near you. You have a huge one in your garden. That's so cool. You know, I hadn't really been exposed to them much. There were some on my university campus, but we never like planted them at home. And there's really only one that like I know of in my neighborhood. I'm sure I could find one if like I looked enough. But I wanted to talk a little bit about invasive species and like why it's important to plant natives. Let me just like, okay. So invasive species are just species that are not of the region that you currently live in. And why that's important is because the birds and the bugs and like the whole chain, the whole food chain is reliant a lot of times on these very specific plants. Like you can't just, a caterpillar just can't eat like any leaf. Like they've developed in a way that they can only eat and reproduce and make cocoons on like maybe like just a couple species, like sometimes just one species. So if you think about it, like if one species of plant goes extinct, then like, you know, all the butterflies that rely on that plant are also going to go extinct because they rely on it, because they can't just like start eating something else. It's just like junk food to them. So because nothing eats it, it weeds out the native vegetation, because there's nothing to like fight back, because there's nothing like, you know, like eating it, or like, you know, just like it just gets out of control. And then to make things kind of worse, a lot of people prefer to plant like Asian and Eurasian species of trees and shrubs because they're insect repellent. So they're like, oh, we don't have to like spray or worry about any type of scale or leaf miners or anything like that, because this plant is immune to it, because all of the things that eat it live in fucking China. So, so a lot of people like, I mean, I've talked to people about pollinators and they're like, I don't really want bugs in my yard, which like blew my mind. But like, I guess I understand, but I think people just need to get over it, I guess. Yeah. Yeah. So I talked about the buckthorn. Some other lookalikes that I just like kind of determined were lookalikes because they also had thorns, but really probably don't look like alike at all. There's a flowering quince, which is like a flowering shrub. It has like kind of like pinky flowers, and it also has thorns. It's also in the rose family. Some of the diseases that attack the flowering quince also attack the hawthorn. Locust, there's black locust, which have totally different leaves. They have like compound leaves, but the young growth has thorns. But I think I just like locusts, like the honey locusts and the black locusts and the green locusts. They're all natives. And then a crabapple, which is in a different family, but the hawthorn is compared to apple a lot, and the crabapple, some of the hawthorn like doesn't have the traditional like red little palm fruit berries. Sometimes they're like big and like yellow, and like sometimes they're like closer to like purple or black or green. So not all hawthorns like are red, but like generally they are, but not like not consistently. Yeah. Does anyone have any questions? Thank you all for showing up. I've got some recommended books, I guess I can show you. Here we have, it's not very magical or anything, but it's like the only plant book you'll ever need. This is, the Manual of Woody Landscape Plants. It's that big. Swoop. But, sorry, I've got reverse camera on. What is my favorite tree? Here's like, I just wanted to show you, like, these are all considered like mayhaws. These are like all the different leaves it can have. Any invasive to NC? North Carolina, actually, like, everything grows here. So it, like, kudzu is probably, like, the kudzu vine is probably one of the most invasive plants, like, in history. Because they planted it because it was fast growing, like, on arbors and stuff, and it's edible. It's, like, makes this beautiful, like, purple flower. You can make jelly out of it. Came from China. And they planted it intentionally on roadsides for, like, erosion control. So they planted, like, I can't even remember, like 400 acres or something, like, ridiculous, of kudzu vine. And it grows, like, a foot a day. So now it just, like, eats, like, forests and stuff. You could see it just, like, overtaking, like, trees and, like, entire landscapes. So the kudzu vine is, like, definitely invasive. There's the golden rain tree, which I mentioned earlier, the one that smells like peanut butter. I see those a lot. There's a lot of invasives here because it's like really, especially in like the area, I don't know which area of North Carolina you're in, but we're in like the Appalachian Mountains, which is very temperate and gets a lot of rain. And, you know, my reasoning with invasives is like to not really like rip it out unless you are doing that anyway. Like, I don't think you should like rip up your whole landscaping just because you have like, you know, people planted Nandina and stuff. But like over time, if you replace your landscape with more native plants, you can foster your native wildlife and biodiversity in your area. So I love that. You should all try. No sweat. I've got a little butterfly garden outside, and, you know, because it's just me, I'm not like, you know, really big muscles or like landscape girl, you know, I've got a job and a facial team, but I love to, you know, plant like maybe a new plant like every year to just kind of like add on to my little hummingbird butterfly garden. Yeah, I mean, there's Nandina, there's a lot of invasives here. Nandina is like it's like a bamboo kind of. What's my favorite plant? Oh man, there's just so many good ones. I love cottonwoods. I love some of my orchids. I love my jewel orchid. I've got a scarlet buckeye. I love the buckeye tree. I love dogwoods. I like native dogwoods, but I also love the Kusa dogwood. Um, oh, um, I don't know. There's like just so many magical plants, and like learning about them have really like opened my eyes to the outdoors. I've got a really cool tree in my front yard that's a flowering Japanese cherry. And like, would you call that invasive? I'm not gonna cut it down though, because it's a beautiful tree and it's like amazing. But you just pull up all its little baby trees that it tries to put out. Yeah, yeah. Um, I love black walnut. That's a really good like environmental tree. Like there's so many species that live off of like oaks and maples. If you just plant like one oak or maple tree, you can foster like so many birds and butterflies and caterpillars just from that one tree. Um, so yeah, it's one thing if you're planting like something for monarchs, because monarchs they're one that can only reproduce off that one like butterfly weed. Um, but so you want to plant that, but then, think of how many other species you could foster by just planting like a single tree. So I've got How to Plant a Tree. I got this at the Morton Arboretum in Chicago. And then I also have Bringing Nature Home. Yeah, you're so right. Like what you have in your garden and what you have in the forest is like totally different. Honeysuckle, like things that have been planted like in the past for like what I was talking about, like erosion control, or like a lot of times it's like people trying to solve problems, and just like being like, oh, oops, like now this plant is just like totally taking over. So honeysuckle is one of those, the Amur honeysuckle. Um, I've got one of those outside, but I just trim it back, and it's not offending me. So yeah, I think like if you think about like you don't want to spread invasives. So like I would use kudzu vine for like crafts because there's so much of it. But I definitely wouldn't want to like spread it around or like accidentally get it to grow at my house or anything. Um, but I think that's, it's so good for like crafts and weaving because it's got like that flexible vine. And there's so much of it. So you're not even taking any habitat away from any wildlife. Yeah. I love all your comments. I love all of you for showing up and laughing at my silly life. Does anyone have any other questions about plants or things, forests, or the Faisal stream? Tomorrow we have forest frolicking. Me and Raven are going to tell you how we frolic through the forest. And after that, it's Bree has her Awakening Intuition workshop at 6, which is kind of about like tapping into your intuition and like communicating through plants and animal totems to contact like loved ones. I think deceased. I'm not sure, but she's really sweet. I'm excited for that. And then on Friday morning at 11, I'm doing my spirit staff workshop. And I'm gonna like talk about like sticks and how I've made spirit staffs and the journey I've been on. And I think I'm gonna make one for you. I've got a couple waiting in the wings, so I'm excited about that. Yeah. Very good. Oh, thank you. I love what we've been doing with the faceless stream too. It's nice to like show up for people in this kind of way. I think I used to do, I don't know, I haven't really done like a live stream like this, so it's been really fun to like work together with people on the similar path. And yeah, I love that. I mean, yeah, so hot take is like, I think fairies sort of like exist within like the realms of plants. Like if, this is just my personal belief, I guess, but if like if the plants have consciousness, would that like sort of personify in a spirit realm separate from us? I don't know. I think it's kind of related. So, and I think I have fairies in my garden, and I think it's really amazing. Like the people that stop, or like the dogs that just like come in. Like I don't know, the people that are just like, oh, like I don't know. I just think like I'm in a special place, I guess, and like I think nurturing your garden and like planting things that fairies would like, which is like flowers and like having a little house for them and like just making it like really cute and like neat, and you know, fairies love that. So if you want to foster fairies in your own garden, you can reach out and I can give you some suggestions. Yeah. I know some of you are more urban fairies, but it's nice to have like that connection just right outside your door. Yes. Oh, yes. Thanks, Jesse. Thanks for showing up. I'm glad I didn't totally like, you know, stress out about this whole thing. I think it went fine. I even brought some of my plants inside. I've got some, like a begonia and an African mask and some ferns. Yeah. Got some candles, got my Hawthorn spirit candle. Yeah. Let us know if there's anything you want to learn more about. I know someone asked for like recommended reading. That's why I wanted to bring out some of my plant books, just some of the things that I've learned from. But like, I think we're going to do it through the page, sort of like recommended profiles and stuff. We can put those through, and then we can even like put it in our stories for like recommended profiles and like links and information. I think that'd be good. So I'm DeerHart.